Clean Kennedy. I think at one point we figured out that Donna and I volunteered to help with the kids ministry at a conference
Yeah.
in would have been like 91 or something. Uh,
Yes.
and so Donna was probably changing Luke Kennedy's diaper. It definitely wasn't me doing something like that.
I was born in Aurora, Colorado, at Fitzsimmons Hospital, which is now Anschutz. Went to, at the time, there were two high schools, and I went to the old one along with my husband, Dan, and that's where we met.
They
And
actually called it the old one. That's
no,
they should have had a
but
better name for that high
people
school.
would know Aurora Central.
Okay. Was 225 existing when you were?
No, no,
Okay.
no. I grew up just like two houses off of Montview Boulevard. So I would have been like 4 blocks from the end of the runway
Oh,
at Stapleton. In fact, on Sunday afternoon, that we would go out and sit on the hood of the car and just watch the planes come in and go out. So I met Jesus at camp when I was 7 years old. Always been involved in church and doing things in the church. By the time I was in eighth grade, I was the church pianist.
oh
I
wow.
did a typical uh, going off the rails for a little while in my high school year, but nothing uh, severe. It was bad enough, and never
Like
walked away.
you chewed a little bit of tobacco, that kind of
I
going
wish
off the
that was all
rails.
it was, but it
Yeah.
was a little more. um,
I get the feeling you're not wanting to get into the detail of your sin life
no, I don't need to get into the detail. That was a long time
because
ago.
I know you're kind of a crazy Christian because you've introduced me to some people that I just consider to be crazy, like Leanne Payne, for example.
Yes, but when he went to college, something snapped in me. Maybe it was just having two kids and doing nothing else, no TV. I
Hmm.
started reading, and I started reading everything I possibly could. I read philosophy, I read all his Bible stuff. We were also very influenced by Francis Schaeffer and the whole Labrie movement. That was during the time of the abortion stuff going on, and he had done a couple of media things where they had done a whole thing about abortion. I don't know how many part thing that you could show at your church and discuss it.
Okay.
So we were way into all of that.
So
Um,
Francis Schaeffer wasn't afraid of the culture war of
oh no, no,
Roe
no,
v.
no.
Wade and all that. He was going after it.
In fact, there are a lot of people would say now that he went too far. We started saying there's got to be more. So we picked up a book called Fire in the Fireplace and started reading it. And it's all about the Holy Spirit. And it really, it just piqued our interest. And it was one thing after another. And Dan would tell the story as he got a flyer in the mail for a spiritual gifts conference. He had no idea. In the evangelical church at that time, spiritual gifts would have meant the passages in the New Testament that talked about hospitality, encouragement, all that list. So we're pastor Church of Craig, and then we did that for 5 years. Then we came back to Denver so Dan could go back to seminary, helped start the vineyard. Uh, Interestingly enough, my dark time of the soul came. Dan really drug me kicking and screaming into the charismatic. Dan was rolling down the aisle, and I was kicking and screaming. Um, and I would say it's probably been only in the last 10 years that I have felt super comfortable there. I've always been a skeptic by nature, and so there's always been this conflicting thing going on in my head. In theory, I believed it all, but the practice was just kind of
You
freaky.
weren't sure. Yeah.
And I just went into this place of, okay, God, you're going to have to sort this out for me. So I just shut everything down, didn't read my Bible, didn't listen to Christian music. As a musician, I backed off completely. Musicians deal with their ego. I don't care what a great person you are, you always deal with your ego.
Yeah.
And I needed to purge all that. I needed to deal with um, God doesn't love me because I play the piano and I sing, and That is not my gig. So I literally just purged myself of all stuff in my everything church related. Just took it down to bare bones. I don't know how long it was, how many months or years before I picked up my Bible. A friend of mine, we were in a house church at the time, and I had a wonderful group of people around me that just looked at me and said, Charlene, do whatever you need to do. We're not going to pressure you. You know what? I would show up at everything because my husband was in charge. But I had a friend, a bass player on a worship team, gave me Brennan Manning's book, Ragamuffin Gospel. And I started reading that book and the lights came on.
Wow.
And so I was in my early 40s, and it was probably the first time that I really connected with God's love for me. I think all my life growing up, I had a very stable home. I knew God loved me, but it was such a head thing. It was such a, principle, proposition. And at this point, I really knew that I knew that I knew. At that time, we were going through some stuff with the family. There was just a ton of stuff going on. And during that time, I connected with the great fathers and mothers of the desert. And I just began reading all these Catholic authors. I think my mother just about croaked. I started with those authors. Then I started with Psalm 23. And I don't know how long that's all I prayed was Psalm 23, Psalm 23, something. And I remember I spent 6 years outside of the church, never went to church. The kids would call me the monk on the patio because I would sit and spend hours just waiting for something. Lord, where are we going? I was ready to come back, but I couldn't find my way just yet.
Coming down.